Who killed Jill Dando? London, April 26, 1999. A horrific incident that would draw millions of people's attention and permanently alter the country occurred on an otherwise typical morning. A senseless and vicious act of violence killed Jill Dando, a well-liked journalist and television host, outside her home. Her unexpected death stunned the nation and led to one of the biggest inquiries in British history. Despite the relentless efforts of investigators and the intense media scrutiny, the question remains, who killed Jill Dando? Thank you for joining us as we investigate this timeless enigma. To find the truth behind one of the most notorious unsolved killings in UK history, we will investigate the case thoroughly, looking at all relevant angles, theories, and pieces of evidence. Who was Jill Dando? A well-known British journalist, Jill Dando has been hosting national BBC television shows since 1988. Throughout her illustrious career, she hosted the BBC's Breakfast Time, Breakfast News, 1 o'clock news, and 6 o'clock news. She received another BBC Personality of the Year award in 1997. She was hosting Crime Watch with Nick Ross when she passed away. Dando, who was born in Somerset, Pennsylvania in 1961, had heart surgery when she was 3 years old. She attended a comprehensive school in Worrell, North Somerset, before completing the journalism program at Cardiff Metropolitan University. At the Weston Mercury, a Somerset provincial newspaper where her father Jack and brother Nigel also worked, she started her career as a trainee reporter. Dando's father lasted 10 more years than her, but she lost her mother to leukemia in 1986. When and how was she killed? 3 months prior to her passing, Dando had become engaged to well-known physician Alan Farthing, who would later become a surgeon and gynecologist for the royal family. She sold her own home in Fulham and spent most of her time at his house in Chiswick. However, she drove her BMW convertible home in the early hours of April 26, 1999. Arriving at around 11:30 a.m., her killer ambushed her from behind, just outside her front door, throwing her to the ground. Placing the gun against her left temple, he discharged one shot. About 15 minutes later, her neighbor found her body and called the police. The hospital declared Dando dead after her arrival. What happened in the investigation? The murder of Dando turned into the decade's largest criminal investigation. The London Homicide Squad allegedly conducted over 2,500 interviews, obtained over 1,000 testimonies, and located over 1,200 cars. On the 20th anniversary of Dando's passing, Detective Hamish Campbell, who oversaw the murder investigation, stated in a BBC program that some actions to trace and eliminate one person might take a day. It could take 2 weeks for one activity. However, there are thousands of them, and handling stranger homicide presents a significant challenge. On May 25, 2000, a police tip led to the arrest of convicted sex offender Barry George for Dando's murder. A neighbor of Dando's claimed to have seen George on their street the day of the murder. George also resided in Fulham. As Susan Mays turned to face George and spoke to the defense during the Old Bailey trial, she stated, "I'm looking at him now." The prosecution identified George as the murderer because of his reputation as a recluse, his prior conviction for attempted rape, his arrest on Kensington Palace property in the 1980s while carrying a knife, his use of multiple identities, and his service in the Territorial Army before his release, which provided him with firearm experience. Additionally, forensic experts thought that a tiny particle found in George's coat might have come from the gun that had murdered Dando. After taking him into custody, the police found 4 copies of the special Jill Dando issue of the BBC's Ariel magazine, honoring the late presenter in George's belongings. In 2001, George received a life sentence. However, after 2 appeals and 8 years in prison, the court found George not guilty of the murder in 2008. A neuropsychiatrist testified that George had an IQ of 75, making it doubtful that he would have the ability to plan and clinically carry out the killing. The inconclusive ruling on the particle evidence led to the retrial. In 2023, a documentary released an interview with George. "They have stolen 8 years of my life, and it enrages me," he uttered. Do we know who killed her? In a BBC documentary about the incident, Detective Campbell asked, "Do I think somebody will come back to court?" No, probably not. There were moments when I thought we would never figure it out. Sometimes I would think, no, we're not that close. The police only saw Dando's killer once, and that sighting was not very helpful. Richard Hughes, Dando's neighbor, spotted a 6-foot-tall, white man, maybe 40 years old, walking away from the house after hearing a scream. There might have been additional sightings, though. A postman, delivering mail to Dando's home, an hour before his death, reported seeing a dark-haired man in a suit staring at him. A traffic warden also noticed an illegally parked Range Rover on the street. Shortly after Dando's death, 2 witnesses reported seeing a dark-haired man in a jacket sprint down the road. A CCTV video captured a Range Rover speeding away from the site around the same moment. What are some of the theories? Numerous ideas abound regarding the identity of the person who killed the journalist. In an interview with The Times, Nigel, Dando's brother, stated, "My personal feeling is that it was somebody looking for a kick and for notoriety." Many people thought that Dando had been pursued by someone connected to whatever she had said on Crime Watch because she was the host of the program. Theories included those of disgruntled viewers, enamored admirers, and individuals or organizations that had felt intimidated or offended by some of her previous journalistic investigations, such as her work on the war in Serbia and Kosovo. Was it a professional job? Numerous aspects of the case pointed to something far more professional, such as Dando's murder, rather than an unhealthy infatuation gone bad. Experts assert that expert killers employ the tactic of ramming the gun into her temple, which not only muffles the sound of the shot, but also partially halts her blood flow. Dando's neighbor heard the presenter call out and heard no gunshots. Therefore, the trick worked. Then there was the question of how the gun, a 9mm short-caliber semi-automatic pistol, according to forensic investigators, ended up in the wrong hands. This was a difficult task in Britain, particularly before the internet made the black market easier to access. The Week reports that in a 2017 ITV program, an investigative journalist who had previously worked as a police officer disclosed that he had spoken with an unidentified hitman who claimed to know Dando's killer's name. Are there any other unsubstantiated theories? One unproven scenario included a criminal boss from Serbia, the widow of Slavko Kuruvića, a Serbian journalist who was shot dead in Belgrade only 15 days before Dando, stated to the Daily Mirror in 2012 that she thought Dando was the target of a Serbian hitman. "I believe that Kuruvića and Dando are related. I believe they put them both to death," she stated. 3 weeks prior to her passing, Dando had made a plea for refugees from Kosovo who were Albanian. In 2001, the Old Bailey used the Serbian theory in George's defense during his trial. However, there were other BBC reporters based in Belgrade at the time, including international affairs editor John Simpson, who would have been much easier targets and escaped unharmed. There's also the idea that Dando was the unfortunate victim of identity theft. Why does the case pose so many problems? Years after the murder, the case remained on people's minds for a variety of reasons, including the fact that Dando was well known and well liked by the British public, the fact that her attacker escaped punishment, and the fact that it was incomprehensible that someone would wish to murder the broadcaster. I appreciate you looking. Remember to subscribe and like our YouTube channel.